Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with my Ancientsathon TBR. And technically this is just really going to be options for my TBR because I'm torn on a lot of things. Ancientsathon last year and also this year for me is a readathon that really gives me the impulse to reread. Last year and also this year I really wanted to structure my entire TBR around rereading classics that maybe I haven't read in many years. So in many ways, these are just options because I do feel the impulse. I really do. I feel the impulse to reread some things, and I'll see how the month goes. I'll see if I wind up rereading anything. So let's just get into my list. Again, since these are options, I may not get to all of these. That would be okay because I think the majority of these books actually will fulfill a lot of different prompts at once, which was my goal with structuring this TBR. So first of all, of course, I'm going to be reading the group read, which is the Book of the City of Ladies by Christine de Pizan. And I'm really looking forward to this one. I've been skeptical of it in the past because it does seem as though it's going to skew quite philosophical, but doing a little bit more reading on the book, I do think it's probably going to be something that agrees with me. And so I'm really looking forward to this one. Hopefully it is as good as I think it's going to be. I think we're going to kind of move through history and analyze different women throughout time, whether they are mythological, whether they were in the same time as Christine de Pizan in the medieval period. So this one kind of has the medieval period covered for me if I want to try to move through time as our bonus prompt is. But I think several of these that I have on this list actually are medieval classics, but I'm quite partial to the medieval period. I'm looking forward to this one, but specifically I'm really looking forward to the discussion that I think David and Tori and I will be able to have once we read this book. For nonfiction, I decided to go way back in time and go to really the real ancient world. This is the one that I really am pulled to rereading for. I want to reread Plutarch really bad. I really want to reread Plutarch, but I don't really like the edition of it I have. So I decided to go with something that is new to me, but is also kind of segmented out, which will make this a very good book to read across the month, in my opinion, and that is Writings from Ancient Egypt. This one sounds so interesting because it really combines a bunch of different writings from ancient Egypt. And so some of them are more kind of banal, like just kind of the day-to-day life living of ancient Egyptians and money, taxes, things like that. But there are also selections from the Egyptian Book of the Dead and different things here. So this book in and of itself, I think also covers a bunch of different prompts because I think it would also cover kind of the mythology religion prompt quite well. I just find ancient Egypt endlessly fascinating, and I think it'll be good to have a book like this on my TBR that I can pick up here and there, read a little bit of, and make some good progress on by stretching it out across the month. In terms of poetry, I had big dreams, and I didn't bring everything down here that I intend to dip in and out of. I really want to use the poetry prompt this year to give me the opportunity to read shorter form poetry because I do tend to gravitate towards epic poetry. That's really what I truly enjoy. And I notice that I often overlook shorter poems in order just to jump into something really long like epic poetry. And so I would love to try some ancient poets that I haven't read before. So like Catullus. I don't think I've ever read anything by Catullus, but I would love to revisit old favorites like Horace and Ovid. There are actually several of Ovid's that I've never read, but I couldn't resist putting an epic poem on this list. And this is one that I'm really excited about, and I'm shocked that I've never tried it before because it has loomed large on my TBR since I think one of y'all told me about it. And that is the Lusiads, if I am not mispronouncing that horribly. And this is a Portuguese epic poem that was published in the 1500s. So this covers kind of the Renaissance time period for me. And so this is based around Vasco da Gama going around the tip of Africa and discovering India. And I think the author of this poem really wanted this to be Portugal's Aeneid or the Iliad, something in that vein. And so this really calls back to epic poetry of the ancient period, which I think will really appeal to me because that tends to be some of my favorite epic poetry. It was written in the ancient world. And so I think I'm going to just really love this. It's very short for an epic poem, which thank goodness. So I think this is one that I'm really going to try to prioritize this month. I just have a very good feeling about it. In terms of plays, I also have big dreams. I always want to read more Shakespeare, but I couldn't decide on one that really was appealing to me right now. But I did decide this is officially going to be one of my rereads of the month. I really did want to give in and let myself have at least one reread. And so I'm going to be rereading Elektra by Euripides, which is possibly my favorite play from ancient Greece. I also love Orestes by Euripides, actually. And I'm never quite sure if it's Elektra or Orestes that I had my initial real obsession with when I was in high school, because we read a lot of the ancient Greeks when I was in drama club, and I played Elektra one time. So I have a fondness for Elektra that I recognize a lot of other people may not have, because she does have her issues. Let's just say that. But I believe that Euripides is my favorite retelling of the myth of Elektra. This edition also includes Medea and Helen, which is about Helen of Troy. I've read Medea, but I don't know that I've ever read Helen. It seems as though at one point in time I had read the large majority of Euripides. So I'm kind of confused. See, this is why I think rereading will be very, very helpful to me. Sometimes when I reread a book, it's like reading it for the first time. It's been so long. But Elektra is the play that I decided to go with. Oh, I should have included this in the poetry section. This is the Anglo-Saxon world and anthology, and there are a lot of Anglo-Saxon poems in here. So I really wanted to read this, but this also kind of crosses over into the nonfiction realm. So this is another book that similarly really goes for a bunch of different prompts at one time. And so this is also one that I would like to read piecemeal throughout the month. And I would really love to read some of the poetry here. So really I'm putting this on the list kind of as a poetry entry, because I know The Wanderer is in here, and The Wanderer is one of my favorite poems of all time. And so again, that's going to be a bit of a reread, but everything else in this collection is kind of law-based. There are writings from Alfred the Great here that I don't think I've read before, so the majority of this will be new to me, but a couple of the poems would be rereads. So I'm really excited about this one. Again, this is one I'll start this month and I probably won't finish, but it's nice to have a couple of things for a readathon that you just kind of read a little bit of here and there. In terms of religion, I do have a couple of things on my TBR that could already go for this prompt, religion, mythology based, but I wanted to throw on a couple extra options. One of those is the Library of Greek Mythology by Apollodorus. And this is one that it shocks me I've never read. And I'm really excited by it. This is one of the few sources from ancient Greece that we have on Greek mythology. And I always, it seems like when I go into the summer, just go through a phase where I need to read a bunch of Greek mythology retellings. And so I sense that that's coming on. And I think this will be a really good one to get me in the mood for that. As I understand it, this is a little bit more of a guide to Greek mythology than truly a retelling of the myths. And so I don't know that this is necessarily a good place to start if you're not all that familiar with Greek mythology, but I'm going to be interested to see how he does it, especially as this is one of the few ancient sources we have on Greek mythology. Also semi in the religion realm, but also going for me for the prompt of a book that it's time to stop thinking about and start reading. For me, that is Anselm of Canterbury. And I have had this book sitting on my shelf for over a year now. And I constantly think about it. Every time I look at it on my shelf, I'm inspired by it. I really want to pick it up. But I have the sense that he's really going to go over my head and I'm not going to understand a lot of what is said to me in this book. Anselm of Canterbury was a religious thinker, a Christian religious thinker who lived in the medieval period. I believe he lived in the 1000s and 1100s. And of course he lived in Canterbury, but I believe he led a very interesting life politically. But apparently his writings are very, very inspiring, and I know I'll like them. I just think that it's going to take a lot out of me. And I think that's why it's a book that I've tended to just think about and say, one day I'll pick this up, but I think the day to pick it up is now. So this is going on the TBR. It's very long, but it's also more of a selection of essays and a selection of his writings. It's the major works. And so I think I might just pick one of his major works to focus on, but I'm not sure which one yet. Last but not least, I do think there are a couple here that fit this prompt as well, but I wanted to pick a specific book for the prompt to read a book over 300 pages. And this is one that I'm excited by, but I'm also a little bit intimidated by. I had two options for this prompt, and I settled on this one, and that is The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I just know I'm going to really love this if I give it a chance, if I give it time. This may be a book that spills over from June into July for me because it is a very, very long book. I'll tell you the page count. Hopefully there are notes. Actually, it doesn't look like there are any notes at all. What? I'm gonna need help. 613 pages. Wow. Okay, but a lot of it's poetry. I think a lot of it is in verse. This is one of the 4 great classical novels of Chinese literature. All 4 of them sound great to me. Journey to the West is the one that I'm really intrigued by the most, but I picked this up on a whim when I saw it in Barnes & Noble one day, and the back, it just sounds amazing, and it sounds like it's gonna be kind of sad, but that can work well. I think that'll work well for me, especially in a classic. And I'm excited. I don't know if this is actually an abridged version of it, because I would assume that The Romance of the Three Kingdoms was really, really massive. And so this seems rather short, so maybe this is an abridged edition. But my other option for this prompt was also an abridged edition of a really long work, and that's the Mahabharata. So I could have chosen that. I could have done that to myself, but I chose not to. You never know. It's between the two of these, and I think I'll probably just choose whichever one I'm feeling more in the mood for. The Mahabharata as a story, I think I will enjoy more. I don't know. I think thematically, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms is going to work very well for me. But I think this is the one that I'm going to lock in. I'm going to say this is the one that I want to read for the prompt to read a book over 300 pages. But I think this is a good mix for my TBR. Again, these are just kind of options, so I might swap some things in and out. But right now, this is what I'm feeling for my TBR. I would love to know down below what you're planning on reading for Ancientsathon. But that's going to be all from me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.